All right, folks, happy Easter and Passover to all out there. We appreciate you coming aboard for another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo. What an absolutely sensational week of sports. What a great weekend, too, that you had in sports here. Final Four, now we have a championship game set for Monday, UConn in Michigan. And you have the start of Major League Baseball, and we are now within 20 days of the National Football League's draft. But there you have it, right there, my friends. The national championship game all set up for you on Monday. It is Michigan and UConn. What about the job that Michigan did and the way they just completely dismantled Arizona? Arizona had no answers for the backcourt of Michigan. Everyone knows when you're going to win a national championship, it's your backcourt, it's your guard play. It has been a statement for this tournament for decades. How good do your guards play? Arizona was in a complete mismatch during this game here, 91-73, and they just completely dismantled that Arizona team. I saw that Arizona team earlier in the year against Kansas, and I thought they were the best team in the country. I could not believe what I witnessed. They got off the floor better than Arizona. They out-rebounded them. The way they got to the loose basketballs on the floor just was an absolute destruction of that team. More so than not, I thought a lot of people were just surprised by the way that the pacing ran Arizona off the floor. Absolutely a tremendous outing. And it shows you, too, there were three teams this year that you could put in that conversation as the three best teams in college basketball. You put Duke in that conversation, you put Michigan, and you put Arizona in that conversation. And without a doubt, Michigan looks like the best team heading into that national championship game on Monday against UConn. What can you say about UConn? I mean, they look like they belong, don't they? I mean, this is now the third time in 4 years that they're in the national championship setting. 71-62. Hey, Illinois had the better roster. They were the bigger team. They were one of the biggest teams in NCAA basketball tournament history. They had all the shooters. They had the perimeter. But what did the thing look for UConn? What separated UConn? Man, they were in the light. And what I mean by that being in the light is that when you play in championship settings all the time, you have a comfort zone. It looked like you belong. Nothing was going to shock you. How about that timeout that Dan Hurley called there with 6 minutes left, and you saw him on the side there telling his guys, we're going to finish this baby off, and we're going to play in that title game on Monday. Let's go finish the job. They went out there and finished the job. Up and down the court. Man, Dan Hurley is such a great coach. Every one of those players. You know what you notice also with UConn? As big as Illinois was, they just ran them up and down the court. Reed was spectacular offensively and defensively on the rebounds. He was making shots early. Man, UConn never looked back in that game, and they took that team to the woodshed by the end of that game when it came to getting things done. 71-62. Third time in 4 years, Dan Hurley has got his Huskies playing for a national championship. Do you understand that he's in the conversation now with only John Wooden, who have done things like this? John Wooden. Here is a coach that is a modern-day Bob Knight. I mean, the way he coaches his basketball players, I think they look at everybody there in stores. What I mean by that is this. They must recruit everybody, but don't accept everybody, because not everybody can play in an environment like that. When we're in an environment today where if you say anything to players, they're going to be in the transfer portal because the coach is on their ass. Hey, old school way of coaching, and you're getting the same results. Every time somebody says to me, oh man, get off my lawn. Well, Dan Hurley coaches his players the same way that Bob Knight and all those great coaches like Dean Smith. Dean Smith told me this years ago when he was alive and he was coaching North Carolina. I recruit players that fit my personality so it's easier for me to connect. And that's exactly when you see connection on the side there with UConn. Third title in 4 years they're going to be playing for. Dan Hurley, John Wooden. You talk about a guy who's now putting his stamp on the college basketball history level is incredible. What a job. Jim Calhoun set that program up. UConn used to be a doormat in the Big East. They were the teams that people looked at and went like this. That's a basketball program that everybody killed. Georgetown killed, St. John's killed, Villanova killed them, even Providence. They were the doormats of the Big East. You're looking at Rome now in college basketball. Yes, going on about UConn because I love to cover greatness. That's just greatness and what's going on right now with that basketball program. And Dan Hurley is the number one reason for that. All right. So the president of the United States, Donald Trump, made a mistake here. He signs an executive order relegating college sports, which means this. In the past, and what people have always gone by this rule with the NCAA is that you get 5 years to play 4, and if you transferred, you had to sit out a year. Well, now with all these transfer rules where you're immediately eligible, which I'm a fan of, the president has come in trying to put guardrails on this. This is a mistake. Every kid's situation is different. You know, am I supposed to sit at a program because a program doesn't want me to go to a rival? Say you're Alabama and you got a kid there. You're going to keep that kid at that program. Kid wants to transfer to Auburn. I can't transfer to Auburn because the president put guardrails in. I say this all the time. The NCAA, the National Communist Association of America, has always come down on the player and has always come down to limit them on what and how they can move and how they can go from school to school, whether it's making money or the transfer. The two things that aggravate a lot of old heads like Donald Trump is the fact that they don't want to understand that college sports is a gigantic business. This is no longer amateur sports. Stop trying to save amateur sports. It has been gone for decades. You know, I say this to you, nil means now it's legal. Are you under the impression players weren't taking money back in the day? Or how about this one too, when the president is saying you get one transfer? So medical hardships. What if a kid, again, at the end of the day too, has to go back and has to get a job to support his mom? And he has to be able to go back home to help put food on the table. He should lose his eligibility because there was an issue with maybe a father dying at home and the kid had to go back. He should lose his eligibility. I don't believe that at all. I don't think a kid's clock should start. And I love the fact that guys like Trinidad Chambliss get an opportunity to play. Trinidad Chambliss may not ever get a chance to play in the National Football League. But now that you get an opportunity to make money in college sports, President of the United States doesn't like that. Well, guess what? Here's my issue, too. So Lane Kiffin, he comes into my home. He recruits me and says, I'm going to treat this kid like he's my own son. And what does he do on the 23rd hour before the college football playoff tournament? This guy picks up and he moves to Baton Rouge, leaves those kids in a lurch. Shouldn't he have to sit out 6 months, 5 months before he started recruiting? Of course not. It's cool for him to make $14 million or athletic directors to make north of $3 million or these college programs that are in these giant conferences like the Big Ten in the Southeastern Conference. Everybody's making money but the kid. And now the kid's making money. Everyone's got a problem with it. What they don't like also is that you have control of your own destiny. People don't like that. So the president comes in trying to control kids' destiny by not leaving. Now, look, I'll say it one more time to you. I don't like the transfer when kids are in spring ball and they get a chance to transfer after spring ball. I do think the calendar needs to be changed. The calendar has to be adjusted, in my opinion. There's no question. NCAA, one thing they need to do is fix that calendar for recruiting. All right, my great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in all of America for a reason. It's family-owned, family-run, with over $30 billion recovered. Think of that. They started this business years ago when John's brother ended up getting injured, and John became a crusade. Do me a favor, folks. That family in Florida, $350K they were offered, they got nearly $12 million in settlement. The family in Pennsylvania, $650K, they got nearly $30 million. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales, pound law 529. Brady Cannon next here on SportsGrid. going to talk a little college hoop and also a little Masters coming up next week. Hey, how about on CBS, what you got coming up? So you got the national championship, actually TNT, TBS on Monday. Then you turn around and you got CBS covering the Masters. So Brady Cannon joins us now here. First, we'll talk some ball here. And man, Brady, how shocked were you that Michigan ran Arizona off the floor the way they did yesterday?
I was pretty shocked, Dan. It was unfortunate. I think the entire country was looking forward to this marquee matchup, these two powerhouses, and it was absolutely dominated, really from start to finish by one side, that being the maize and blue. And you go to the earlier semifinal as well. I think that was somewhat disappointing too, just from a fan perspective. Neither game was really that entertaining. And I believe it was really a coaching mismatch. I thought Dan Hurley, outcoached Brad Underwood, and I thought Dusty May outcoached Tommy Lloyd. You wouldn't necessarily expect that. I mean, if these two teams, if we saw these matchups play out 10 times, not every one of them is going to end up like that. But on an isolated one game situation, I thought these two coaches really outdueled their opponents, and it was dominant. And unfortunate for the fan, but hey, congratulations to UConn and Michigan. We'll see them on Monday night.
Am I right when I say this, that Arizona just had no answers for the guard play of Michigan? I thought it was when they went back and forth and they went up and down the court there, it just looked like Michigan just absolutely took them to school there at that backcourt play. Am I right when I say that?
I just think as a whole, they looked more prepared. Arizona looked like a little bit deer in the headlights. They didn't know what had hit them. And it's interesting that the guard play was, a dominant piece of the Michigan puzzle, because I thought that would be possibly an advantage for Arizona. You figured the size of both teams was pretty much of a wash, especially in the front court, right? But Arizona had a little bit more size in the guards and on the wings, and I thought their offensive rebounding ability would give them the edge. Let's remember, both of these games were point spread at 1.5 points. They weren't nearly that close. Everybody expected close games. And, you're trying to find reasons why one team might win, why the other. And I thought Arizona, at the guards, like I say, had a size advantage, and also on the offensive glass, it was completely neutralized. I mean, it looked like early in the game, you're like, okay, Michigan's out to a, 7-8 point lead. No problem. Arizona will come back. This wasn't Purdue. You remember Purdue jumped out to an early lead over Arizona. No, and throughout the regular season, I was talking about this on the show with Scott Wetzel yesterday too. In the Big 12 conference play and in the Big 10 conference play, it looked like Michigan showed a few more chinks in the armor on occasion, and it looked like they were possibly more beatable than Arizona showed. Now, I know each team had a couple of losses, stubbed their toe a couple of times, but it looked to me like Michigan was the one that was more vulnerable. But boy, not last night. That was very, very impressive. And I don't know. I mean, what does Dan Hurley do now, Dan? Does he have another coaching miracle up his sleeve where he can knock off the big bad Wolverines?
Man, I don't know. I'll tell you what, I am such a fan of Dan Hurley here. And tell me if you thought the same thing that I did watching this. And I'll use a personal reference here, Brady. When we played in national championship games with Jimmy Johnson, when I got into those games every single year, I got into a comfort zone. Did it not look like those UConn players looked like they fit in, belonged? Nothing was going to shock them. I mean, Illinois may have had the best roster going into that game, but those players just looked like the light wasn't too bright for them. Am I right to say that?
It's interesting. I do agree with that perception, but I don't know if any of those guys were, I don't think any of those players were on the previous Final Four and championship teams for UConn. So it's not like they had been there, done that, but their coach certainly had them prepared. I think what really gave them, obviously they had a sense of confidence coming in, But what really kind of eased the pain and the nerves and that type of thing for UConn was starting to hit their three-pointers. You remember the game against Duke, they started out 1 for 18 from behind the arc. Now they turned it around late, and that was really a big piece of why they were able to get that victory. But they started hitting their threes early and often against Illinois, and that really gave them a great head start. And they really kind of rode that all the way to the end.
You know, we're starting to put Dan Hurley in this conversation now. Can you think of anybody else that has put a team 3 times in 4 years outside of John Wooden? Is there anybody else in basketball history in the tournament that you can remember that's been in that kind of conversation? He closes that up and wins that 3rd title in 4 years. I mean, Brady, we're talking about a guy that's got as many national championships as Bob Knight. I mean,
Yeah.
we're now in that area now. What's your takeaway on him?
It's amazing. And I don't think he even had nearly the team this year, Dan. You know, you look at all the ratings out there, Ken Palm, you name it, whatever it is. I mean, some people thought Illinois wasn't favored by enough yesterday. You know, they were
Yeah.
1.5, 2-point favorite. Many people thought it should be 3.5. And I didn't necessarily disagree. This UConn team looked absolutely beatable. They lose to Marquette. They lose to Creighton. They were thumped by St. John's. I remember a few years back, I was on UConn at around 20-1 when they won the national title, cashed a nice ticket. That team looked unstoppable. Both of those teams really that went on to win the national title. Didn't look the same this year. Didn't matter. You could say Hurley did a better coaching job with this team. It's really remarkable. And you know, every time you turn and you don't think it's going to work, here he is again in the final. So it's really remarkable, because I don't even know if this is the best. Is this a top team in the top 10 team in the country? Well, obviously, yes. But going into the tournament, we weren't sure. There's a lot behind this team that is a credit to Dan Hurley, I believe.
No question about it. 30 seconds. Who wins Monday? Michigan, UConn.
Michigan, don't know if they cover, though, Dan. What's weird about both of these games, and I talk about out-coaching their opponent in the semifinal, I believe our perception of both teams right now is a little bit elevated because they weren't really tested. So is UConn is really as good as we saw them on Saturday? I don't think so. Is Michigan really as good as we saw on Saturday? Probably not. Right now, I'd probably take the points with the Huskies, but Michigan wins the game.
Man, I'm praying that this game is going to be more compelling, like you said, than those games we just saw this past weekend. We're going to switch it up, and we're going to go to Augusta National with Brady. We'll do that next right here on SportsGrid. Well, without a doubt, one of the big stories of the week is obviously Tiger Woods, and Brady Cannon joins us here, and it is going to be, I think, more sidebar stories going on at Augusta National than more so maybe even on the course in the first 2 days there, Thursday and Friday. And Brady, instead of like polluting a question to you, I'm just going to say the name Tiger Woods. You take it from there.
Disappointing. I think that's my first reaction. Unfortunate. Probably needs some help. Um, it's I mean, he was obvious. It's almost like he was so dominant in the game of golf, and I think a lot of that has kind of led to some of his issues. You know, wanting to control the situation. That's always been why he's been tremendous, why he's been Tiger Woods, why he's been a champion 15 times in majors, and it's because he controlled the entire thing. And I think that's maybe led to issues where why are you driving a car when you're doing this? Why are you doing, it's like he doesn't want to delegate sometimes, and maybe he should. And it's led to a lot of issues. Are we going to find out more about his health regimen, and was he doing things early in his career with drugs? And we don't really know. I think there's still some skeletons in that closet, and that's not positive or negative. Everybody's got their issues. He's still Tiger Woods, still one of the greatest of all time on the golf course. And not every athlete on the court or on the field or whatever has been perfect off the court. It's okay. I don't know, Dan, if we're ever going to see him really play again. I don't think we keep asking ourselves every time there's an issue, is he going to win again? Is he going to play again? And my answer has always been really no. 2019 Masters, that was unbelievable in itself. I think it's getting to a point where he's too injured, he's too beaten, he's too battered, and there's too many things going on, obviously, with this latest issue. I'm kind of hoping that we just see a nice, positive, recreational Tiger Woods play the TGL. I think that's what I've resigned to at this point.
How about this? Would this be fair to say, because you mentioned it, one of the greatest of all time? Brady, I thought this guy would have 25 major championships. He would have blown by Sam Snead for the all time mark. Is it fair to say that he underachieved in his ability? Because look at Jack. Jack is not, I don't think, as skilled as what Tiger is. You could be the greatest of all time athlete, but not fulfill your destiny, too. I mean, it's almost like he underachieved, because when I look at that great talent, maybe the greatest irons player, that's what Jack says, of all time. Am I right when I go down that lane here? Because, I mean, he is the greatest player of all time. But yet, Jack will have the second place 19 finishes, plus the 18 major championships. Jack's resume is 10 times better.
Yeah, I think Jack is the best. I believe Jack is number one and Tiger's number two, but Tiger was more dominant for a short period of time. And to your point, kind of the more talented guy. Jack maximized what he had. He got every ounce out of what his capabilities were. Not necessarily the case with Tiger, like you're saying, but it goes into injuries and what kind of supplements has he been taking, and the painkillers and all this other stuff that's gone on around his life that has interrupted really his performance on the course. So I think underachieve is a tough word to apply. I mean, you look at guys like Marcus Dupree, the best that never was, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he was that talented, but injury and this and that and the other. Life happens, and I think that's what you have to kind of assign with Tiger Woods. I don't think underachieve is the right word, and I don't know the right word yet. But I absolutely see the point you're making, and there's no doubt the other side of the equation is Jack. I think Jack absolutely maximized every ounce of potential he ever had.
30 seconds. Who do you like at Augusta this weekend?
I've played 7 guys, Dan. Cameron Young, your players champion. Jordan Spieth, maybe he rekindles the magic. Colin Morikawa, I think he's going to be healthy enough. I think he can do it. Hideki Matsuyama, won there before. I think he'll be a factor again. Patrick Reed, moving on from Live, this guy has been remarkable at Augusta National. And then Adam Scott, the old veteran, he might have one left in him. And here's a young guy who I think is a really good bet for a top 10 finish and might go to win the whole thing. Min Woo Lee. Look at how this guy's playing as of late, man. He's a monster. If he doesn't win this year, he's going to have some majors, I believe, in his career.
Man, I can't wait to see what happens there at Augusta. Brady, thank you so much. I appreciate you. We're going to drop the punt. Bobby Valentine next here on SportsGrid. So the first week of Major League Baseball, this ABS system, the automated balls and strike system, has been a hot topic going around Major League Baseball. And no doubt about it, the umpires in Major League Baseball are being put in the firing line. And they have been called out almost each and every single game in each and every single series. I saw one of the games where one of the umpires was basically overruled 6 different times. Now, listen, I'm going to give the umps a little pass here because when we grew up, we all knew that the strike zone was letters high and knees down to the knees. So that's what the Major League umpires were always schooled on. Now you're looking at what Major League Baseball is doing. Major League Baseball has shrunk the strike zone, which is making it more difficult for the umpires to call balls and strikes. I think you're going to get an opportunity to see this. Maybe Major League Baseball is looking for more runs to be scored because they're shrinking the strike zone. You're going to have an issue here where Major League Baseball players now, again, you're going to be sitting on fastballs. You're going to be sitting on curveballs because you know the strike zone is not what it once was when you had that latitude of getting the black when it came to the umpires. The umpires have been called out, no question about it, throughout the first couple games of the series and of the season because of what this ABS is. Now, look, this is kind of rigging the game. You know, back in the day when you had the steroid era, Major League Baseball, or you were juicing the baseballs, or there was even a question about the torpedo bats. Now you've got, again, the game of baseball with this ABS system. I think, look, technology is great. And let's not kid ourselves here. We're starting to see this now go into the National Football League too, with first downs. You're starting to see technology is going to soon or not take over for the umpires. You're going to have a scenario pretty soon where you're going to have people in New York calling balls and strikes in Major League Baseball games. And I got to tell you, make no mistake about it, man, I'll tell you, I saw Bobby Valentine's tweet about this, and I wonder what Bobby V's takeaway is on this new ABS system. Kurt Schilling said finally umpires are being put to question right now. Let's go to Bobby V and get his thoughts here. Bobby, I appreciate you very much. Thank you so much. Bobby, what's your takeaway on ABS?
Well, I'm at the games live, and the fans seem to like it. So I guess that's that's the number one thing that everybody wants to be part of it. So they look at it and they get excited, especially when the home team wins the call. But I just don't know why when we play the game of baseball, a strike's not called a strike and a ball's not called a ball. To have a hitter have that other thing that he has to think about when it's so difficult to hit to begin with. And you're supposed to have only one thought in your mind, and that's hitting the ball. And then you also have to call balls and strikes. It's tough. But right now, if it's supposed to be just for the fans, then I guess it's working.
Bobby, do you think it favors the pitchers or the hitters more here with this? Because to me, isn't it more of a reduced strike zone? Because when the umpires were schooled, weren't they schooled letter high and knees high? It looks like the box is a little smaller. Am I wrong when I say that?
No, I think they changed the strike zone to try to,
Okay.
increase offense. Yeah. So it's not about the box increasing or decreasing or you know, it's just one of those things. I mean, if you use up your two challenges and it's the bases loaded in ninth inning and you don't have a challenge right, and the umpire decides he wants to get on his flight early, I'm not sure that that's really what the game's supposed to be.
How would you handle it? If you were the manager of the Mets, how would you
I'd have an
handle that?
automatic
But just
strike zone for every pitch. That's how I'd handle it.
would you challenge almost every pitch?
No, you can't use it up. If you're trusting your catcher, which you should, and let's get this one for whatever this is worth. You really don't see the ball those last 6 feet. The umpire doesn't, the hitter doesn't, and the catcher doesn't. But because they've seen so many pitches coming in, it's at the similar trajectory. You can project whether or not it hit the corner or not. But when they're talking about a fraction of an inch of the ball on the plate, and that's only if it goes across the middle of the plate, come on. I mean, that's not that idea of that human factor really can't work there. There's no human element that it can be correct all the time. I think the machine could be correct all the time, and I don't know why we don't use it.
Okay, how about this then? Do you think that Major League Baseball, Bobby, is going to get to a point where these umpires have an earpiece in their ear and they're going to be calling every single ball and strike, and you're not going to have the interaction any longer with the umps and the managers any longer because they're going to be doing it with technology? Do you think they're rolling towards that and going that way?
Well, the manager is not part of this anyway, right, Dan? It's just the catcher and the pitcher and the hitter. Um, if you hear the propaganda, they're talking that it's really important that the skill set of the catcher is something that they scout, and it's very important that they cheat. That they could take a ball that's a ball and move it into the strike zone. It's really important for them to do that, and they get paid for that. And I get that, I guess. But why can't they just get paid for being what a catcher is supposed to do? Catch the ball, block the ball, throw the guy out, tag the guy out at home, call the right pitch, do the things that human should be doing during the game. And getting it right, I think, is just such a important part of the game. That you saw the Dominican team in the WBS get walked off the field because the ball was called a strike with the bases loaded. Come on. If that happens in the World Series, we're happy about that. I'm not. I'll guarantee you, unless I'm the benefiting the incorrect call by the umpire.
I have to ask you this question. I had a debate the other time, a couple days ago, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong on this. Bobby, why do I miss the steroid era of baseball? I mean, I love the steroid era of baseball where you had 50 plus home runs being hit. It was just an incredible time to watch all those home run hitters. Am I nuts when I say this? That I enjoyed that era of the game.
Well, um, I was an athletic director for 8 years at a Division I school, and the question I had to answer the most is, why can't we do things that will help us improve our performance? It's just our performance is what the students would always ask, and I guess that's what you're asking here.
Yep.
The guys who throw in 100, are they on steroids? Huh, I'm not sure, but they're doing a good job on the pitching side. The hitting side just hasn't been able to keep up with what the pitching has done. And is steroids the answer? I think maybe it's that 51% of the ball has to be on the plate and let the machine decide if it's 51% of the ball, make the pitchers throw it over the plate in order for it to be a strike. And maybe then you'll see more hitting.
Man, I tell you what, Bobby, like you said back in the day here, man, I'll tell you what, that was one of the most interesting eras of baseball. You had a dead ball era and you had the steroid era in Major League Baseball. We're going to continue more of our conversation with the legendary Bobby V next, and we'll talk to him about what's going on. Also, he spoke about the velocity a couple minutes ago. You know what you see in Major League Baseball today? You see a lot of offers when it comes to strikeouts and a lot of velocity in Major League Baseball today. So we're going to talk a little bit more with him on that, get his opinion on it. Here, we're also going to talk about Shohei Ohtani. I saw him go 6 1/3 the other day. I'm saying that he's getting better and better and better every time this guy gets out on the mound and every time this guy gets behind the plate here. We're going to talk more with the legendary Bobby V. We'll do that next, right here on SportsGrid.
I know you didn't. Talk!
I'm innocent. Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time. Yeah.
Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago? How much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
For two Connecticut guys, this breaking news here coming in here. Solo ball from UConn is in a boot. Me and Bobby V are Connecticut guys, and that may affect the national championship game on Monday against Michigan. By the way, how about our Huskies getting into the title game there, man? First and foremost, before we get back into baseball, that's a big loss there for them.
Yeah, it's a big loss, but it still is mind-boggling when you think of UConn being where it is, to have so many great players, so many great coaches, so many championships on the hardwood. It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It is because, Bobby, I mean, years ago when Dan Gavitt started the Big East, that thing was like roadkill. UConn would get killed by Georgetown, Providence, St. John's. To see them now, what Calhoun did and what Dan Hurley's doing is incredible here. Let's drop a bun and get back over to baseball. Bobby, am I right when I say this, that today the game, especially in the pitching side of it, it's more about velocity than innings. Back in the day, you wanted guys to go 7 2/3. Now it's about like these openers now, and it's more about bullpen. It's more about velocity. Is that good for the game in your opinion?
Well, I don't mind pitchers getting better. And I think that, Tom House, who is one of my coaches and one of the leaders who now teaches quarterbacks to throw as well as pitchers to throw, tried to figure out how do you throw, biomechanically correct. And finally, the whole world is caught up with his knowledge on the pitching side. The hitting side has been left behind because there's been so many other ideas instead of just following the laws of physics and figuring out what it takes to swing the bat properly. You have all these voodoo doctors out there teaching guys to do this and to do that, and it's very confusing. But I think the hitting could catch up, but you have to shrink that strike zone a little. You can't have the ball off the plate at 100 miles an hour and on the knees and expect a hitter to do anything with it other than take or swing and miss at it. It's just too difficult to do in that fraction of a second that it takes to hit.
Gary Sheffield was on a couple weeks ago, Bobby, and we were talking to him about players today just it's like not a big deal for guys to have 3 or 4 strikeouts in a game. It's just not a guy can have 175 strikeouts and no one thinks twice about it. It's hit or miss now in baseball. Do you like that aspect of where the game has gone to now? I mean, when you played, that used to be the walk of shame. Now no one cares about it any longer.
Yeah, yeah. I get that. And it bugs me when a guy takes a fastball down the middle with 2 strikes because he was looking for the off-speed pitch or whatever reason he has. I tried and I took a guy right out of college back when I was managing the Rangers in the mid 80s, and his name was Pete Incaviglia. And he struck out a lot. He hit a lot of home runs. He was the Golden Spikes Player of the Century, as a matter of fact, out of Oklahoma State. And my preach to the press and everyone was, well, he strikes out, but it's only 1 out. He's not hitting into a double play. And if he has a chance of giving me 4 bases, I like it. And then I was considered an idiot for having that thought. And now that thought is mainstream, that it's okay to swing and miss as long as you're trying to do damage. I think that hitters are going to get to that point where it's a happy medium. Now, Dan, we used to have a situation when, okay, we'll put the ball in play, but we're going to take our best rip when it's a fastball count, when it's 2-0 and 3-1, and that pitcher has to throw me a fastball because it's a fastball count, and then you could swing for the fences. Well, there's no longer a fastball count. So that has changed that hitting philosophy dramatically, I believe, because a 2-0 breaking ball is just as common as a 2-0 fastball.
Am I right when I watched Shohei Ohtani the other day? I saw him go 6 1/3, 6 strikeouts. I mean, Bobby, it looks like the game is slowing down more and more for him every time he gets into a ball game. I'm watching a guy. And I'm going to say this. I mean, we've had so many great Major League Baseball players in history. Bobby, this guy's the greatest player I've ever seen. I mean, if he played during Babe Ruth's time, he'd throw a perfect game every time he would go out there. I mean, am I going overboard when I'm saying that? I've never seen anything like this.
You're going overboard, Dan. He wouldn't throw a perfect game, that's for sure. But he's damn good, and it seems like he like has an extra focus on pitching. I saw him pitch with the Angels and hit with the Angels, and it seemed like hitting was what he was trying to prove. Maybe because guys like John Smoltz would come out and said, "Oh, he should be a pitcher only. He's not a great hitter," and then he became a great hitter, and now he wants to prove to people that he's also a great pitcher. So I don't think you're going to see the big numbers as a batter. I think you're going to see important numbers, and it'll still be like 40 home runs, and he'll hit 290, and he'll drive in a whole bunch and score a whole bunch. But I think it'll be fun watching him throw the ball this season.
In a minute, Bobby, do you think we're going to see more of a trend of this where organizations, you work with the Angels, do you think you're going to see more of these organizations get these dual threat guys that can both pitch and hit? Do you think that'll be a trend, or is Otani one of?
Yeah, I think he's more of a one-off, and he's had the two Tommy Johns, and that's one of those situations. Organizations don't want to lose a hitter if he's that good of a hitter because he has the arm injury, and the arm injury is almost a guarantee for guys these days. So I think they'll stay away from that unless they get a reliever who kind of throws a knuckleball, or even a starter who throws a pitch that is not so invasive to the elbow.
30 seconds here. Mike Trout, you're with the Angels. Are we expecting a bounce back season from him?
Well, he is, and he's going to try his darndest. That fastball that you mentioned earlier has really, caused havoc in his life, and they're not throwing him as many breaking balls, which he can really hit a long way, and somehow he's got to catch up to that fastball.
Absolutely. Bobby V, happy Easter to you, my friend. Longtime friend, obviously, thank you so much. I really appreciate you very much. I'm looking forward to Major League Baseball. Sileo says we'll do that next, right here on SportsGrid. Boy, I'll tell you what, man, with some great storylines that are coming out of the tournament, both men and women, just to keep it fair here, at the end of the day here, too, it's South Carolina versus UCLA this afternoon for the women's national championship, and Dawn Staley will try to get another national title. And I'll tell you what, one of the storylines this weekend was Gino Auriemma versus Dawn Staley. That thing on the sideline there after the game when his UConn Huskies, Gino Auriemma's Huskies, got run off the floor, and him going over there with the handshake, him getting in her face, her saying, "Don't do that. You're dismissing what these two programs did in this game to get to this game. Don't dismiss it. Don't do that." I got to tell you about Gino, man. In my opinion, that was great for the women's game. And I'll tell you why. Yes, he's a tool. Yes, that was uncalled for. By the way, his apology, see this apology here? What's the one thing missing in this apology? Dawn Staley's name. He couldn't even bring himself to bring her name up in an apology. Look at this there. There's no excuse for how I handled the end of the game versus South Carolina Gamecocks. It's unlike what I do, what our standard here at UConn and what we've set. I want to apologize to the staff, no Dawn, and to the team at South Carolina. It was uncalled for how I reacted. The story should be how well South Carolina's players, I'll add, destroyed my UConn Huskies. I don't want my actions to detract from what I've had a great relationship with that staff, and I sincerely want to apologize to them. Gino, the Tool Auriemma. Hey, dude, I think you did a lot right there to promote women's sports and the final today. Hey, look, you need a villain in sports. And anytime you have a villain, that's a good thing. Villains are needed in sports when you have the good guy, bad guy dynamic. And Gino was a tool. He completely was. Everyone is banging on him. Everyone's saying how unprofessional he looked. Everyone's bringing that front and center. Well, guess what? I hadn't really talked about the women's game at all. Now we're going to be watching this afternoon and see if Dawn Staley's Gamecocks can win another national championship. This goes back to the days when Gino used to have his arguments with Pat Summitt and she was at Tennessee. He and her would go back and forth, and I thought it was a great dynamic back in the day when it came to promoting women's basketball. And this is kind of what you have here. Yes, bad look for Gino. Gino, how could he ever be and have a bad look? By the way, Dan Hurley was asked the question about Gino and about his actions and what he did, towards Dawn Staley. He's like, if there is one guy who is genuine and there is one guy who deserves the pass, it's Gino Auriemma. He's one of the most genuine dudes you'll ever meet in your entire life, and he's one of the most important people in all of basketball and what he's meant to, especially the women's game. I get this. I didn't like what he did, but if you think about it when it comes to promoting the sport, I loved what he did. Because what it does, it puts focus on it. You have a conversation. There's dialogue. There's going back. And again, like I said about having the villain, Auriemma has played that villain. UConn is a villain. Look at the two coaches you have at UConn. You have Gino Auriemma and you have Dan Hurley. That's the Rome of basketball today. That's where college basketball resides. No matter what happens in the national championship game on Monday, right? UConn basketball is the Rome of basketball right now. Third national championship game in 4 years. How many Final Fours did Gino have going into this? He had 25, right? Final Fours going into this with all the national championships. You put him in the same conversation with John Wooden with how many victories that he's got and how many national championships. I absolutely loved in a way what he did, because what he did was he put the focus on the game. Now, look, it was a tool move, as I said, and Dawn Staley was absolutely right in how she responded. I love how the Gamecocks responded, and I loved how their players responded. This is going to give them a nice little juice going into this game here. Gino Auriemma and Dawn Staley had to be separated. This is the storyline coming out of that Final Four game. Had to be separated between the two. Hey, man, villain versus the good guy. That's what sports are. Bad guy versus good guy. Villains versus the guys in the white hat. You made Dawn Staley a person in a white hat, and now he goes into the national championship game against UCLA today, looking for another title and another feather in that hat. Man, I liked it. Again, he's a tool for doing it, but he brings a lot to the game. Gino Auriemma, he'll go down as by far one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time. Cap Ferrar, we'll talk some MLB. We'll do that next in hour number 2 right here on SportsGrid. We're going to talk some Major League Baseball with Cap Ferreira, and we're going to talk also some NCAA. I guess the good and the bad for Cap here, right? Am I saying that when we're going baseball and the tournament here? So let's start it off with Major League Baseball here as we come through the first week of the opening of the season here. Yankees out to a strong start, 7-1. Are you looking at them right now? What's been the good for the Yankees here getting out to this 7-1 start?
Oh, I'm excited to talk baseball with you, Dan. This is our first time, and I don't mean to be that guy. I don't know if you're a Yankees guy, but I mean, come on.
You bet
Yankees
I
and
am.
Dodgers. Yeah, I kind of got that feel. But with the money you guys spent, of course you guys are 7-1. You better be 7-1. Same thing with the Dodgers, though. But you look across the board at the Yankees right now. And I was talking with a couple people about this. I think some of these hitters are a little bit more in form right now than we're used to seeing simply because of the World Baseball Classic. I always say in the beginning of the year, tread very lightly with your totals if you look at overs, tread lightly if you look at hitter props, because these pitchers usually come in better form for the first, I'd say, 3 or 4 weeks. And then you finally start to see your hitters catch up, especially those veteran pitchers. If you're looking at some of the older guys that you expect maybe to start fading as the season goes, the early season is the older guys' time, right? But we've seen these hitters like the Yankees, right? You've got Stanton hitting 396 right now. You got Rice at 360. You got Bellinger at 286. I mean, it's not that way across the board, but some of these hitters are really dialed in at the beginning of the season right now. If I was to bet this game, I'll be honest, I don't like betting games that get delayed. So if there's any kind of rain delay or any kind of pushback, I usually stay off. Story for another time, but my very first start in college, I had a 35-minute rain delay, ever since then, whether it's betting or actually playing, I stay away from the delays.
You tell me on this. Is I'm going to use a football analogy here. I call the first month of the season in September Liars Month. You really don't know what it is, and you don't know really who they are. You see after that, and you really get a sense of what your football team is. Is the first 25 games, is that like the Liars' time in baseball before you get a true sense of what a team is after that first 25?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 25 games is a good say. I say 4 weeks. I know a lot of people out there say 2 weeks. That's not enough time. 2 weeks is just enough time to take your first road trip and come back home. I say 4 weeks. You take 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, the hitters are going to be in form. The pitchers will have 2 or 3 starts under their belt, and then we're really going to get the truth. So, yeah, the first 4 weeks are the Liars' weeks, like you're saying.
All right. So, hey, by the way, since you say you towed the rubber before on the hill there, what do you make of this ABS? Is it, you think it favors the pitchers or do you think it favors the hitters? To me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like they shrunk the strike zone and you're trying to produce more runs with this thing. As a former pitcher, how do you look at this ABS system that baseball's implemented?
Such a good question. I think it favors the hitter, like you said, because as a pitcher, I was always told, you start in the middle and you work out. You earn your corners, so to speak, right? So I might hit that black 2 times on the corner and the umpire doesn't call it, but I put that pitch in the same spot for a third time. I expect him to call that pitch, right? Well, now that we've got the hitters able to check it, if they check that on the third time and call the umpire's bluff, now I don't get that call that notoriously I've been earning, if that makes sense. It's spots that as a pitcher, you're told you got to earn those corners. You don't just get them, you got to earn them. Well, now the hitter can take that right away from you if they call your bluff on it. So I definitely think it favors the hitter.
Let me go over to another team in the American League East here. Boston and Alex Cora's guys out to a 2-6 start. Any concerns there on what you're seeing in the early part of the season, or too early?
Definite concerns here. I mean, and same thing with the Padres too. You got the 3-5 Padres on the other side of the Red Sox today. I would have concerns. It is very early, like we said. You give the team 4 weeks. Walker Buehler going today. He had a blow up start. Only went 4 innings, gave up 5 hits, 3 runs. Expect him to settle down a little bit. And then Ranger Suarez on the other side. Man, he gave up 7 hits, 4 runs. Ranger Suarez is one of those pitchers that I always expect to come back to the norm. I watched him do it with Philly for year after year after year. He'd have a couple starts at the beginning of the season that were a bit rocky like this. And then it's almost, I don't want to say like a revenge start, but he comes out, with something in the back of his mind. Today, for me, I would bet Ranger Suarez. I'd either take Boston in the first 5 on the run line. I'm not a big fan of full game run lines when it comes to betting. So I do like Boston in the first 5 here in this game. I think Ranger Suarez has a big game today.
Major League Baseball has a community college baseball team, and I'm going to call it the Milwaukee Brewers. I can't name you one guy except for Christian Yelich on that team. Here they are again out to a 6-2 start. That year they had a year ago during the regular season was probably very disappointing when they got knocked out by the Cubs. You can't get knocked out by the Cubs if you're the Brewers, right? I mean, here they are again, though, man. That's really a really good organization, isn't it? And how they've been able to put pieces together there in really almost like the true form of Moneyball, no Cap?
Yeah. So you said it off the top, or it's not just the organization, it's the fans, it's the environment, it's the atmosphere. Milwaukee is a baseball place. Okay. Which, by the way, Dan, I don't know if you know this, Milwaukee is who drafted me out of high school. I ended up going to Tech instead, but they were the team that drafted me first. So shout out to the Brewers, man. But it's just a great environment. Like I said, it breeds baseball. And when you're in that environment, you don't got to have the best. That's what's beautiful about baseball. We all know baseball, the worst pitcher can go out there and beat the best team on any day or vice versa. And if you have that environment, if you have that, just the backing that the Brewers have, it's hard to have a bad season if you're a Brewer. I mean, you're going out there you got the fans, you got the organization behind you. It's just a good environment. I keep saying that. I would love to be there.
How about Gary Templeton told me about that Brewers organization, and tell me, like back in the day, Walt Jocketty, when he ran the St. Louis Cardinals, he said that every single time you got into a Cardinal organization, the things you did at A-ball, the things you did at AA, the things you did at AAA, every single thing was the same. You knew what was expected when you were an A, AA, and AAA. Same when they had the Cardinals back in the day. So when you got to the bigs, you knew exactly what was expected of you. Is that the difference between some organizations and some organizations that don't get it? Because, I mean, some guys make those easy transitions. Cab, is that kind of what they're doing in Milwaukee right now, why you're getting such great performances from guys they bring up?
They do a very good job in their organization, especially in the lower A, which, you know, we all can talk about double A, but when we go down to rookie ball and low A, these guys are in the trenches. I mean, it is tough to be a rookie ball player. It's tough to be a low A ball player. So when you've got, I guess, you know, a structure that you can stick to, like you're talking about, it makes all the difference in the world. These guys are, you get a signing bonus and then you're making no money, right? And when you're looking at an organization like the Yankees, which we started off the top with, or the Dodgers, who, you know, they're willing to go drop a couple extra $1 million instead of producing that player from rookie ball. Yeah, if I'm a rookie ball player or a low A player, put me in the Brewers organization. I don't want to be in the Dodgers. I don't want to be in the Yankees. So absolutely.
Cubs sitting right now at 2-4. Any concerns with them getting out of the gate?
I know I said I raised the concern flag with the Red Sox and the Padres. I just don't think the Padres have a very good lineup this year. So it's falling apart. But the Cubs, I think the Cubs will be all right. I'm not too concerned right now for the Cubs. And what are we looking at today? It's they got Shota on the mound again today, and he blew up in his first start. He had 7 strikeouts, but he gave up the 6 hits and the 4 runs in the 5 innings. I think this is a great spot for Shota to get right here. And I'll let you take it. Maybe the under. I take the under in the Chicago game.
You got it, Kev. We're going to talk some Final Four here in a second. Don't forget my great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. Folks, it's because they win. Simple as that. Family run, family owned. I told you about the family in Florida that was initially offered $350K, got nearly $12 million in settlement. Or how about the family in Pennsylvania that was offered $650K on a settlement? They got nearly $30 million in settlement. This will be the easiest decision you ever make in your life. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound 529 and do me a favor. You tell them Big Sills sent you. We will talk some Final Four. I think this is the bad with Cab next. We'll do that right here on Sports Grid. all kinds of breaking news here on this Easter here. Patrick Waugh has been relieved of his duties there with the New York Islanders. Peter Dubois is now the interim coach there with the New York Islanders. Here's something else here, too. When I was a young kid, every year I was in college, every year I was in high school, I should say, the New York Islanders won the Stanley Cup. All right, so now we're going to bounce to basketball. Cap Farrar joins us back here again. So we talked baseball. You said you really had a good time with baseball in your picks. Now we're going to go with college basketball. So how'd you do in the Final Four heading into this championship game? By the way, Solo Ball now is not going to be, it looks like, able to play in that game on Monday. He's in a walking boot right now. So first and foremost, how did you do with your Final Four? And give me your takeaway of what you think is going to happen in that title game on Monday.
It's such a catch-22 loaded question you just gave me. The Final Four was not good for me. For those of you who like to quote unquote count units, I'm still up about 4.2 units on the tournament. But yesterday I gave 3 of them back, over 3 of them actually. I went 0-3 yesterday. It was a very tough day. I was on Arizona, and we all saw that was maybe the worst bet that anybody could have possibly made. If you were on Arizona with me, sorry about that one. We missed the boat there. So why do I want to go back to UConn? And now you're telling me Ball is going to be out. That's huge. Now I will follow that because, sometimes they'll give that they'll put that boot on and they'll tell you, oh, it's very questionable. And then we find out they're playing. I would watch that closely. But this line came out at a 7.5. The way that I start my cap for college basketball is I like to make the lines before I see what the lines are. I thought this would be a 3.5 or a 4.5, not a 7.5. So at 7.5, you're giving me 3 points of value in what I think the line should be. And that makes me want to take UConn. And now I'm actually seeing a 6.5 at some places. So you're telling me it opened at a 7.5, Ball's not playing, and the line came down to a 6.5. That makes me want to get on UConn even more. That being said, guys, I saw how dominant Michigan was against the team who I thought was the best team in college basketball yesterday. This Michigan team is the truth. They're for real. And I absolutely do think they're going to win this basketball game. But if you're giving me 7.5 points, man, I just got to take, we need a better game than the last game, right? Come on, give us something to watch. We don't need another blowout. And the Illinois game it finished as a 9-point game, but I mean, Illinois was never really in that game at any point either. So, let's have a good national championship. Let's cash a plus 7.5 ticket. And that's it. I think I'll take that 7.5.
Cab, wait a minute here. I don't believe Ball's as injured as people think. Would it be under Dan Hurley to do something? I mean, for gamesmanship in a game like that, I mean, how come all of a sudden now Ball's in a boot? He's not expected to play. Okay, I mean, Dan Hurley's capable of anything, don't you think? Coaching, gamesmanship. I mean, you and I played professional sports. I mean, come on, Ham, right?
My first thought when I heard the boot's what sent it for me. If they just said that he had a strain and the boot's what sent it for me. Yeah, this is a ploy, man. We'll see. I don't want to be the one telling you guys that Ball's going to play when he's sitting here as questionable in a boot. But I would bet my money that he plays. If there was a bet that I could take out there, and you'd probably give me plus 135 for it, I would bet my money on Ball playing.
Do you agree that the difference in that Michigan-Arizona blowout was the backcourt play? It just seemed that Arizona had no answers for the guards there at Michigan. I mean, they ran them off the floor.
None whatsoever. And I'll be honest with you, I had a prop in that game. I had Jaden Bradley over 13.5 points. Of course, he ended on 13. Dude, attack the goal, Bradley. I did not like the way Burries and Bradley handled that game. All season, I've been saying that I felt like Burries and Bradley were the best 1-2 guard punch in college basketball. Well, they definitely weren't yesterday. They were very passive. They kept trying to force it down low instead of driving the lane. I think Arizona could have played a much better basketball game. I still think they're a much better team than that. But Michigan, you said it, their guard play. And whether you're talking about the guard player, you got 7'2" down low or 7'3" down low, and Mara. Any time he cut the lane and was open, it's just like dude doesn't even have to come off his feet to dunk the ball. This is a top to bottom Michigan team that is very, very good. So I understand anybody that's laying the 7.5 with them here.
Do you agree one of the things that it looked like UConn and Hurley wanted to do was get Illinois in a running game, get them up and down the court there because of the size that Illinois has? It just, they ran with them. They ran them. They ran them. I thought Illinois had the better roster going into this game. You know, you could have made an argument. I didn't think they were favored by enough in this ball game. What was the difference you thought that the Huskies did to Illinois in this game?
Well, initially it's the shooting. I mean, I know it was just like 0 for 6 to start, but let me pull it back up real quick. Illinois couldn't hit a shot from the perimeter to save their life. I think a V6 started, he hit a couple, and then they hit a couple out there, but Illinois just could not shoot the basketball to save their life. And UConn, even though UConn was missing some shots as well, I feel like UConn's pace was better. I think you just said that. I feel like UConn was getting up and down the court, and Illinois was just not getting set, which is a wild thing because they're a team that I expect to be set and be ready. But UConn controlled the pace of that game the entire time. That was their game. It was their pace. They wanted to speed up. They sped up. They wanted to slow down. They slowed down. They wanted to go to the paint. They went to the paint. I mean, UConn controlled that game the entire time.
Do you think that Dan Hurley's the best basketball coach in the country, not just in college hoop, but maybe in all of hoop, NBA included? Remember, he was offered the Laker gig too, and he turned the Laker gig down. I mean, this guy, it's now he's in the level of what Wooden did. Nobody's done this before. 3 title games in 4 years. What's your takeaway on Dan Hurley?
You know, and you said that too. So 3 title games in 4 years. That's another thing we got is we've got the experience here, right? And some of these players have been there. Dan Hurley, it's like asking an Aggie fan how I feel about Texas. I'm not a Dan Hurley fan, but is he the best coach in all of basketball? I don't know. Is he the best coach in college basketball right now? Absolutely. Right now, absolutely. And I don't like him. So that's coming from somebody who I don't like the antics. I'm not a huge fan of the headbutts. Sometimes I think he wants the camera on him, but yeah, he's the best. He's the one paving the way right now. So tip of the hat to you, Dan Hurley.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I didn't get what that weirdo thing was with the referee too. You know, you could have actually called a T on the guy. And remember, there was 0.3 of a second on the clock there. They could have called a T on the guy. So he could have lost that. Absolutely. Cab, thank you so much for doing this, man. I appreciate it. You make sure you have yourself a great Easter, my friend. All right. So we're going to switch gears. Flag football? You got me talking flag football? All right. We'll do that next year on Sports Grid. So each weekend, we put a rundown together of topics that we put on our programs for both Saturday and Sunday. And unbeknownst to myself here, I saw a flag football topic. So I'm being propelled to talk about flag football. Thanks, Robert. So, flag football, and I do agree, it's here to stay. Flag football is going to be something that the National Football League is going to 1,000% endorse. They just come out of the recent NFL owner meeting saying that there's going to be 32 teams that they are going to have a new league, and the National Football League is going to back it. The National Football League is backing a new pro flag football league with serious VC firepower, teaming with TMRW Sports and investors like Silver Lake, Bessemer, Sixth Street, and more of the National Football League owners. And get this, they're committing $32 million with stars like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Serena Williams, and more to be involved with this. Folks, I will tell you one more time. This is an NFL owner's dream. To get as far away as you possibly can from CTE, from getting as far away as you can from being blamed for the player's health when it comes to CTE. National Football League owners don't like to be in one place. You know where that is? They do not like to be in a courtroom, and they do not like to take accountability. They just don't. The National Football League will not tell you that they are responsible for some of the players' health and their issues that they've had because of the poor helmets that were used back in the day. This is perfect. You want to be able to get away from the helmets. You want to be able to get away from accountability. Look at flag football and the participation that it has grown and where it is today. Look at this here. The LA 28, you're going to see NFL stars in the Olympics, and you're going to see more people being involved with the National Football League in these flag football leagues. I mean, when I saw Tom Brady and I saw Jalen Hurts this past weekend playing in a flag football game, some of the biggest stars like Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, all these guys, I couldn't believe what I was seeing when it came to the National Football League using these stars in these games. This is going to be something enormous because get this, you can also say to women, look, we got a league now that is getting away from not protecting their players, especially when it comes to brain injuries. Look, the National Football League, we all know this. They've got the worst union in all of pro football. They don't take care of their players, nor do they ever care to take care of their players. NFL owners want to have more games. Why not? 96 of the top 100 TV shows are National Football League games. Of course you want to see more of the National Football League. 18 games is now being proposed to the union from the owners. Hey, friends, this thing's going to get to 20 games and maybe even 25 games. Expanded rosters, more buys. This thing's going to go all the way potentially until April, and you're going to have NFL football until the NFL draft, which is 20 some odd days away. This is right up the NFL's lane here, flag football. Plus, now you get to integrate the Olympic Games coming up in Los Angeles for LA 28. National Football League will never take accountability for the damage that they did with the players that the current players stand on the shoulders of. Brain injuries. They never will. Players Association is one of the worst in the history of professional sports. Make no mistake about it. I am a proud NFL Players Association member to this day. And I will tell you one time, and I'll tell you as many times as I possibly can. The day that the NFLPA gets enough cannolis and they're able to battle the NFL owners when it comes to these issues, this is why you're seeing flag football. This is why you're seeing the NFL wanting to get away from the helmets. Troy Aikman said it perfectly. You want to do something about player injuries? Take the helmets away. Get into having more of a flag football scenario. This is why the NFL owners are going to back this and why they're starting a 32-team league coming up here in the next 2 years. Commissioner came out at the owners' meetings in Phoenix and basically said so, that this is something that all the organizations are wanting to do, and this is something that the organizations all want. Remember something, my friends. The Shield is making a killing right now when it comes to TV rights. Did you see how many people witnessed that flag football game, over 1.5 million people watched flag football. The more the NFL puts behind this, the more you're going to see the National Football League embrace this. Again, you get away from CTE and brain injuries. The owners do not want to be involved with anything when it comes to being in a courtroom and having to battle this. Make no mistake about it. You got it. The National Football League is going to embrace flag football. All right. One of my favorite people, he always finds time for me. His dad was sensational to me. His dad started, of course, the Big East. And how about the way that Dan Gavitt runs the NCAA basketball tournament? He's next, right here on SportsGrid. All right, one of the greatest events in all of American sports is the NCAA tournament. It never ceases to deliver. And with us right now is the Senior VP of Basketball. He is Dan Gavitt Jr. here. And Dan, what a tournament you guys have put on. You have to be just absolutely thrilled, not just with the men too, but with the women where you are in Phoenix there too. So, I mean, really, really a great job by your team for both the men and women.
Thanks, Dan. Always great to be with you. Love this time of year. March Madness is special, as you note. And we've had two great tournaments and looking forward to awesome championship games, hopefully today and tomorrow.
So Dan, what makes this tournament so compelling to the fans of America? Because, again, you see these record ratings. You see people just so engaged. The opening rounds were absolutely off the charts. What makes this tournament so engaging to the American fan?
Well, college basketball is very healthy right now. Both men and women, talent level is very high. I think it has a lot to do with it. Basketball as a sport overall, both domestically and globally, is very healthy and growing. I think that has something to do with it. But it's also just a time of year. March Madness is that brand and that season, shall we call it, is something that I think people look forward to. Coming out of the winter, there's not as much competition in the sports calendar. The NBA and NHL playoffs haven't started yet. Major League Baseball has started, but it's just the first days of the season. So I think the calendar has a lot to do with it. And then, of course, the bracket. You don't have to be a big fan. You don't have to know the sport to fill out a bracket and to have fun, following the tournament and have some success, maybe against people that might know a whole lot more about the game than you do.
Dan, I'll tell you about your committee, the way you guys select these teams. college football has a long way to go, and they're trying to duplicate what you guys do. Do you feel comfortable and do you feel pretty proud of the way that the committee got it right? I mean, obviously there was some complaining about where certain teams were, but when you've got 68 teams, that's got to be hard to appease everybody there. Were you happy with the way that the committee put these regions together?
I was pleased. Keith Gill, the commissioner of the Sun Belt Conference and the chair of the men's basketball committee, I think did a terrific job leading his colleagues through the process. We're fortunate that there were very few, really none, bid stealers this year. So, the bubble could be accommodated more broadly than it has in other years. I think they did a great job of selecting the field. There's always, questions and different opinions about where teams are seated. But I think overall, the committee did excellent work. And it resulted in a really compelling, competitive, and fun tournament. And the women's committee did the same thing on the women's side. You had 4 number 1 seeds here in Phoenix, and of course 2 will play for the championship today in UCLA and South Carolina.
So you tell me if you think a lot of folks are talking about expanding the tournament. I know that, they're talking about expanding the college football playoff, but the 68 teams right now, I mean, is it more, are you more favor of expanding the 68? Or how about this, expanding the play-in? What would be something, or maybe you're debating both on how you would go about expanding the tournament, or maybe you're not and you feel comfortable where you are right now?
Well, it's really the committees, the basketball committees that, are undertaking this study and this consideration of expanding the tournaments. It would be inclusive of both, really. If you expand the tournaments, it really expands the opening round of the tournaments. It would be very modest in nature, if at all. This is not going to be widespread expansion. The tournaments have been, the men's tournament's been at 68 now for 15 years. There's a lot of schools that have invested an enormous amount of money in basketball, and there's more depth and parity in the game than there has been previously. It feels right to be considering it. Whether or not that results in actual expansion or not is still to be determined and shouldn't be taken as a fait accompli. But it's, as we've seen other organizations, as you note, Dan, that have expanded their playoffs, it feels right to at least be going through the study of it. And we'll make a decision. I think the committees will sometime this spring, one way or the other.
You tell me, because there's a lot of debate now on conference tournaments, Dan. Do you still think there's a place for those? And do you think like an SEC championship, a Big Ten championship, because again, you're starting to look at those. Sometimes they seem obsolete when you're talking about making it to the NCAA tournament. I mean, what's your position on that? Are you still in favor of playing these conference basketball tournaments?
I very much am, Dan. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's old school, but I do believe there's great value. First of all, they're great money makers for the conferences. In this day and age, that's important. The other thing is, that as great as the NCAA tournaments are, only one team wins the championship. Only 4 teams get to the Final Four. That means there's a whole lot of teams that, fall short of their goal. But with a tournament, you always have the opportunity to be the champion of your league. Purdue is a really good example of that this year. Purdue certainly had national champion aspirations to get back to the Final Four. That didn't happen this year, but they're the Big Ten champions. And for those guys that were together for 4 years, who beat Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, that's a big deal, something that they'll always remember and something that they should be very proud of. So I very much am in favor of it. I do think that we get talk sometimes about smaller conferences, mid and low majors. When they have upsets, those champions that go into the NCAA tournament field, it's great storytelling, but sometimes you're not having the best team in your league represent your league in the tournament. And, that's always a conference decision as to whether they designate their regular season champion or their conference tournament champion to be their AQ. You could make the case that some conferences should consider making their regular season champion be their automatic qualifier for the NCAA tournament because they may have better chances to advance than they do for an upset winner during their conference tournament.
How do you balance this, Dan, when, I was talking to Stu Jackson from the WCC last week. How do you balance power conference versus mid-major? College football went through that a little bit with Tulane and James Madison, because for a guy like me that went to the University of Miami, I look at those two guys and go, well, wait a minute, that's a different metric on how you're looking at those guys. Should the pie be open to everyone? I do think so, but there's got to be the same set of standards, don't you think, on how you bring people, because you're looking for the best basketball. How do you gauge that? How do you balance that out between a mid-major and a power conference when you're selecting teams?
Yeah, it's hard, Dan, especially when you get down to the end of the selection process and you're comparing teams from power conferences to teams from mid-majors that don't have the scheduling and game opportunities that have the power conferences have. So you're really comparing very different schedules. Miami of Ohio may have been the most extreme example of that this year. But, their regular season performance going undefeated was historic. So yeah, that's always a challenge, and increasingly more so because those scheduling opportunities are not as rich as they used to be when the MTEs were providing those opportunities. But I think access is still what makes the tournament so special. The automatic qualifiers are the first and foremost point of access because every conference gets one team in the field. And then for those that don't win their conference championship, trying to find ways to evaluate those teams in a fair way against power conference teams is the work of the committee that's not easy.
In about 30 seconds, Dan, how do you look at the tournament, and where do you think the tournament is in 2 years?
Well, the question about expansion has to be answered. I think part of the reason for the consideration of expansion is what's the best format for the future, not for today and not for 10 years ago, but for 5 years from now and 10 years from now with conference realignment and everything else that's going on in our business. So I do think that's the first decision that needs to be made. Otherwise, I think we're looking at just continuing to enhance the experience, enhance the coverage from our broadcast partners at CBS and TNT Sports and ESPN for the Women's Championship, and making the event as rich and as engaging as it has always been and can be even more so in the future.
Absolutely. Dan Gavitt Jr. here. We're going to have a couple more minutes with him because I want to talk about the landscape of college sports with him, who is the senior VP of basketball for the NCAA, and we're going to talk with him about that. We'll do that next, right here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter.
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago? How much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, we're back here with Dan Gavitt, the Senior VP of Basketball Operations for the NCAA tournament. We were just talking. I mean, I was dear friends with his dad, Dan Gavitt Sr., when he ran the Boston Celtics, and so much pride that he had, Dan, in building the Big East, and to see another team, a traditional team from the Big East in a national championship game again, that must be near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, well, where I am at the NCAA now, I'm very neutral. Every team is, that I support and don't, favor any of them. But I think my dad would certainly be proud of what his vision was, creating the Big East and how it's been so successful over 40 plus years now and been such a big part of college basketball.
And you and I were talking UConn back in the day, right, Dan? That was a doormat. That was like roadkill. I mean, St. John's and Providence and all those teams, Georgetown would just maul them. And to see what, Jim Calhoun first initiated there and how he put the cement in the floor there for that college basketball program, and to see what Dan Hurley is doing now. Obviously, too, Michigan, and a great job that they've done with their athletic program. But boy, this is without a doubt, what a great story going on there in Stores.
Incredible. Coach Hurley's done a remarkable job. 3 championship games in 4 years, 2 championships. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. And of course, Gino, is the standard bearer on the women's side as well. And, 25 consecutive Final Fours, I believe. And it's just remarkable how Stores is like you kind of become a basketball capital when, as you note, that was not the history before those gentlemen took their jobs.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to make Dan not so partial here. And I know I have my UConn blood coming out and my Big East blood coming out in me now. So again here, hey, I want to ask you a question about the landscape of college sports right now. Are you a fan of nil? Do you think there needs to be more guardrails on how it's being delegated? Does there need to be some type of commissioner? Just an opinion here, Dan, on how, first and foremost, you see nil. We'll talk transfer portal here in a minute. But what's your takeaway on paying the college athletes now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that cart has left the barn. I do think that it's here to stay. I think that there's very good reason for sharing revenue with student athletes who generate for their schools an enormous amount of revenue with the popularity of college sports. So, I think that's a healthy thing. Managing it for their own effectiveness and their future, as well as for the schools that have to manage it, is another issue altogether. I think that still needs to kind of find its level. I don't think we're in a healthier, sustainable place right now, but we're working on it. Congress may have to help to ultimately to help in that regard, and the conferences as well. But I do think this is the new reality of college sports, and it's not unhealthy for student athletes to share in some of the proceeds and benefits of what college sports makes from a revenue standpoint and makes it so popular.
Dan, do you think that this is going to separate, though, the haves and the have-nots? And what I mean by that is, obviously, the Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten are the big horses in this whole thing. In your opinion, do we have to kind of gauge, because we want to make sure every kid has an opportunity at playing for a national championship? A team like Miami of Ohio deserves that opportunity and bite of the apple, right? So how do we kind of come up with a guardrail here for that? Is that still something that you just said, he can't put the toothpaste back into, the container here? This thing's out already. We got to come up with a way to be able to figure this out here on how we can make it beneficial for all, women as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's kind of what we're going through right now, is this correction period, where we find out how to make this work, to provide that opportunity for competitiveness across the country at different levels. It's going to be different. The haves and have-nots are going to be different going forward. But there's still opportunity, especially in the great sport of basketball. There's such depth of players and talent in basketball that I do think with 5 players on the court and 40 minutes on the clock, there's still going to be opportunity for Cinderella teams and stories and moments in March Madness that have made it so special over the years. Miami of Ohio is a really good example of that. What they did to SMU in the first 4 was impressive, following on the incredible regular season they had. And then they met a better team in Tennessee that sent them home. But, the High Point did that during the men's tournament as well. And Miami of Florida in the women's tournament got to the Sweet 16 as a 10 seed. So I think there's still, but we are going through a correction period. There's no doubt about that, and we'll see how it plays out here in the next couple of years.
Couple more questions here for Dan Gavitt, Senior VP of Basketball Operations. And Dan, quite frankly, the president came out with an executive order. I don't believe this is my opinion, that I don't think that this is going to hold up in court. We usually get 4 years. You got 5 years to play 4 years, and we had one transfer, but you had to sit out back in my day. Well, today, now you get an opportunity to transfer to multiple programs. And I get what he's trying to do, but again, I don't think that's going to hold up in court. Just your opinion on how you think transfer and the transfer portal should be handled. And do you think it's being abused right now in college sports, in both football and in basketball?
Well, it's the confluence of the transfer portal and NIL and revenue share that has made this such a challenge for schools to manage, and how, players move so frequently, going to several schools during their 4 years of college eligibility rather than just one or two. I do think it's a challenge. I worry about the impact that long-term on players and their development as human beings, to bounce around like that. That's not the real world. They're going to find that out the hard way when they get out of school. So I do think, that if we could ever get congressional help, which is critical, because, as you know, this would not probably withstand a legal challenge. But I would make a case that, student athletes should have a chance to transfer once and play immediately. But doing that 2 and 3 and 4, 3 and 4 times is, I don't believe, healthy. And I think, if there's a way to, to provide that one opportunity, but then to have some more skin in the game for student athletes if they transfer a third or fourth time, is probably a better outcome. But we'll need congressional help to do that. That can't be something that's done without the help of Congress.
30 seconds here. In your opinion, has it made the game better, though, Dan, with people wanting to stay in the game longer because they can be monetized?
Yes, I do think the talent level in college basketball, on the men's side in particular, is near an all-time high, because we're losing so much talent to the NBA after 1 year players, one and dones, and then even players that never came to play college basketball from Europe or other locations that went over to Australia or to the G League elite program. So I do think that the talent level is at an all-time high, because you can make money, because there's great exposure, and I do think that's good for the health of the game on the court.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great time in Phoenix. We'll see you in Indy. Final thoughts next here on SportsGrid. thoughts here. And first and foremost, what the hell's going on in Milwaukee with Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks? I told you a couple weeks ago this thing was going to be an ugly divorce. And make no mistake about it, they're rolling there. So let me get this right here. Giannis wants to play, and he's telling the NBA, I want to play. There's an NBA investigation going on right now into the Milwaukee Bucks on participation. So this goes to the underlying problem that's in the NBA right now. You're debating whether or not the guy is healthy to play. The organization, they want to get more ping pongs for the draft to give them a better opportunity at getting a higher draft selection. Giannis wants to play. The Bucks are saying they tried to put him in a 3-on-3 and he refused to play. Giannis is like, that's nuts. Who in their right mind believes that the NBA doesn't want to sit their star player because their season is a train wreck this year and they get an opportunity to get guys in the NBA draft? Come on, man. Giannis wants to play. How about this? The problem that you have with the NBA is this. You got to coax these dudes to play. I happen to agree with Giannis on this, and I think this is more about the NBA. But we're debating on participation. Do you know there was a Yahoo study that came out this past week that anytime 200-plus games that have been played so far this year, that at any time, only 32% of the stars on each roster will show up to the barn for fans to be able to watch that respected night. So you're telling me you could show up to an NBA game and only 32% of the stars that are on current rosters decide whether or not they want to play. So here, I'll help you out here on this one. Folks, if they don't care, why should we care? Wake me up in June. That's one of my lines that I've always used with the NBA. If you're not compelled to play and you don't have a love of the sport and you don't want to play during the regular season, I would make this argument. The NBA's regular season is the worst of all professional sports leagues because the players don't care. You got to be coaxed to play 65 games? You got to be kidding me, man. Make no mistake about it. There's just part of the problems you have in the NBA. You're debating whether or not to sit a healthy Giannis, and you're coming up with BS to sit the guy, and the guy wants to play. At least you got one player who wants to play. All right. The other thing I want to hit on here in final thoughts is Dan Hurley. Old school coach, old school approach, old school ways. He's in another national championship setting, his third in 4 years. Look what he's done with UConn. He's taken what Jim Calhoun did by pouring the cement in the foundation, and he's expanding it. Can you imagine if LeBron James had Dan Hurley as his coach? What could have happened at the end of LeBron James's career, being coached by the best basketball coach in all of America, and I mean NBA and I mean not just the NBA, I mean also college basketball. Dan Hurley has an old school approach in how he goes and coaches kids. In today's landscape where transfer portal is easy to get into, if a coach sneezes at you or says boo to you, here's a guy that recruits a style of player that he connects with. Here's a guy that looks at everybody in the country but doesn't select everybody. It reminds me a lot of my coach, Jimmy Johnson, the way Jimmy Johnson looked at players. He looked at all the great talented players. But Dan Hurley, you know what he does? He looks at a guy that he could coach. Hey, if I tell you to line up and tell you to get in position to be successful, I'm here to help you, son. Remember, there was a line that all coaches like to live by. And you know what that is? I'll show you the yellow brick road. But son, you got to walk down it. I was told that numerous times by my coach. I'll pave that road for you. I'll make that road easy for you to go down. I'll show you all the speed bumps that you have for the goals and things you want to accomplish at the end of your journey. But you got to walk down it, son. It takes a special player to play at UConn. It took a special player to play with Jimmy Johnson. You just didn't have the greatest athletes on the planet. You had character guys. Guys that if somebody told you it came from a place of love, when Dan Hurley's bitching at you and he's there on the side and he's complaining to you and talking to you about getting the very best out of you, kids today, they take that as a detriment. Me again, One of the great stories of all time for me. I remember going to Jimmy Johnson and telling him, Coach, why are you on my ass so much? Why are you always hollering at me? He looked at me and he said this, hey, son, worry when I don't holler at you. Worry when I'm not in my mind and not when I'm not concerned about you. Because at the end of the day, when I stop caring, that's when you got real problems. I looked at Coach. He goes, now get your ass back in line. And we would go on and win a national title. And I would leave there being a 56th player taken in the NFL draft because I followed that guy's yellow brick road. Have yourself a great Easter. Absolutely awesome tournament on Monday. Women's today. Catch you on the flip side.